or up about 1,000 feet over the valley below.
There's a lot of relevance between those Christians and what our culture is going through. And to the angel of the church in Pergamum write, the words of him who has the sharp two-edged sword. I know where you dwell, where Satan's throne is. Yet you hold fast my name, and you did not deny my faith even in the days of Antipas, my faithful witness, who was killed among you where Satan dwells. But I have a few things against you. You have some there who hold the teaching of Balaam, who taught Balak to put a stumbling block before the sons of Israel, so that they might eat food sacrificed to idols and practice sexual immorality. So also you have some who hold the teaching of the Nicolaitans. Therefore repent. If not, I will come to you soon and war against them with the sword of my mouth. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To the one who conquers, I will give some of the hidden manna, and I will give him a white stone with a new name written on the stone that no one knows except the one who receives it.
Or up about 1,000 feet over the valley below. Spectacular setting here.
Oh, it's incredible.
It's one of the most unique cities in the ancient world here at Pergamum.
What makes it so unique?
Well, the fact that they located the city on this really impregnable fortress up here, and so you can really understand why it's so defensible. In our near view right below us, we have the Steepest theater in the Greek world.
So how many people could sit there?
Somewhere in a neighborhood of 15,000 or so.
15,000.
The nosebleed seats way up the top. I mean, that's really an incredible theater there. And then right next to a temple of Dionysus, so these are from the Hellenistic period. So the Imperial cult temple, the Trajan temple that's here on the summit of the Acropolis, is the only Roman structure up here. And we're actually going to start walking now through this substructure of that temple.
So substructure, you're talking about something that they would have built and expanded on the top. What other examples do we have of that in antiquity?
Well, when they were beginning to build it, they didn't have enough room. So they had to expand it to the south using these arches. So this is very similar to what Herod did on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem when he expanded the temple.
So talk to me about the significance of the city historically.
Yeah, it was founded in the 3rd century BC and became initially a treasury. But then the city developed here, and we have a kingdom called the Attalans that ruled this city for 150 years. And the final king of the Attalans, Attalus III, bequeathed his kingdom to the Romans. And so in 129 BC, the province of Asia was formed, and now the Romans controlled this part of what is today Western Turkey and made Pergamum their capital.
Okay, did Pergamum stay the capital?
Well, one of the issues with Pergamum, as we drove up, you saw we're not on the sea, are we?
No, we're not.
Yeah, so that became a major issue related to commerce. As Ephesus emerged as a much more important commercial center sometime in the 1st century, Ephesus becomes now the capital of Asia, but Pergamum remains a very important city in the province. And so we're coming out on this terrace where the most important temple in the city was, a temple of Athena. She was called the Nikephoros, the victor, bringer of victory for the kingdom here over the
We've been talking about victors.
Well, I like to point this inscription out because it has the names of 2 of our 7 churches on it. And of course, the one we're at right now, Pergamum, but also the next church, Thyatira. So this is the neighboring city just to the southeast. And so they are honoring their neighbor here by erecting this inscription for the honor that they've been given to be the first and the second Neochorus of the emperor. So this is our key word again, dealing with the ability of hosting an imperial cult temple in your city. So the first one built for Augustus in 29 BC, this one built in the early 2nd century for Trajan. This is an interesting one, Jeremy. You well know that there was a conflict in the early church with the titles that were assumed by both Jesus and the emperor. In Ephesus, remember we saw the statue of Trajan with his foot on top of the globe?
Yes.
And he was asserting that he was what?
Well, he was conqueror, he was Lord,
right?
And that's exactly what we have here, calling him Lord of the land and the sea.
That's a bold claim.
So the whole issue in Revelation of the blasphemous names that the emperors had, because they were using the same names for the emperor as for Jesus.
Deification.
Deification.
Yeah.
And one of them was Kurios. Another big issue in Revelation is the image or statue of the beast. As we look down in the end of this hallway, we see a statue of the Emperor Trajan. His head is missing, and this is a copy of the original ones in the museum. These statues would have been everywhere in the cities of the 7 churches. This particular one shows him as the head of the Roman legions in his military garb.
So strength and might and conquering victory.
Absolutely, and he would also be depicted totally naked, which was how male Greek gods were depicted as well, showing his divine nature. And the other way he was depicted was with a toga on, and he would be the model Roman citizen in his toga. So statues of the emperor would be everywhere.
So that gives us great historical context for the book of Revelation and helping us understand that the first century Christians were familiar with this imagery. It was all around them.
It was all around them.
All the time.
They were immersed in it, absolutely.
What do we have here with these steps leading up to this tree?
Well, we've got the base of the Altar of Zeus, and this was the largest altar in antiquity. So Pergamum was very famous for having this altar here in the city. You can just imagine the billows of smoke that would go up into the air from the sacrifices that would be rendered here on a regular basis.
So between the sacrifices being offered here and the sacrifices being offered up at the Temple of Trajan, a very active, idolatrous place.
Yeah, and then the meat from these sacrifices would be taken down into the lower city and sold in the public markets, which would be meat sacrificed to idols, because they had just been hours before offered up to a pagan deity.
And that was something very common in the first century world. Paul had to address it in 1 Corinthians, but that was something mentioned in the letter to Pergamum that they had to wrestle through.
Absolutely, and so this whole issue of syncretism or accommodation to the culture was something the church in Pergamum was very much in conflict with as they struggled with how to deal with it.
And we have to face syncretism today. Every generation of believer has to work through that process of what the culture is saying and then what Jesus is saying.
Yeah, we don't have visible gods and goddesses today, in the West, but we have our own issues like materialism and whatnot that we struggle with.
Idolatry is very rampant now. We have our gods. Maybe we didn't make them with our hands, but we created in our imagination the God that we want to have. So we make God in our own image. Idolatry hasn't stopped just because we're not making them out of wood and stone and precious metal.
There's another phrase in the letter to Pergamum that talks about the teachings of Balaam and the sexual immorality that they were facing. How is that relevant to Pergamum as a city?
Well, the temptation to syncretism or accommodation would have been very real for the Christians in places like this, especially as we've talked about for the elite members in the congregation. We have both external pressure coming from the Roman governors and then internal issues with some false teaching that are going on.
Apparently there is somebody in that first century church that is doing something very similar to what Balaam did. And what Balaam did was he received payment for trying to discourage the Israelites and affect the Israelites, and he accomplished that by getting them to engage in sexual immorality. So for profit, Balaam authorized and tricked the Israelites into being sensual. And that's something that takes place in every age, but certainly took place at Pergamum, and they were being warned about that. It was easier to understand the letter that Jesus sent to Pergamum after walking the ancient city, going to the top of the hill where there used to be this altar to Zeus. And then just maybe 100 yards away, there was this huge structure dedicated to the Roman emperor. Jesus' letter had to do with not compromising. Farrell Jenkins made the point that the first century world was not persecuting Christians for their faith in Christ. They were persecuting Christians for their exclusive faith in Christ. The fact that they wouldn't compromise and acknowledge all of these other deities and participate in the cultural and religious practices of this idol worship.
So we are at the Asclepion here at Pergamum, and Dan and Jet are down here talking, but Dan has been excited about coming here this whole project. Why are you so excited to be here?
Well, I'm a medical oncologist. I do medical oncology and hematology, so blood and cancer. This is an ancient location of healing. The Asclepion, you'll see the stone columns with the snake wrapped around, generally a staff, and the snake was associated with healing. And we even think about the story of Moses and the bronze serpent. Even modern medicine uses the caduceus as well as the staff of Asclepion. Particularly Galen, one of the fathers of medicine, he actually is famous in the Roman world, was born here in Pergamum. The main Asclepion actually had the Hippocratic tradition. And we think about Hippocrates, the father of medicine. It's his tradition that we still follow in modern medicine. We take the Hippocratic Oath.
What's the room that we're standing in? What is it for?
This would be pretty much a dormitory. Sometimes your doctor ran out of treatment options, and so rather than kind of admit defeat, give you a referral. You know, I need a second opinion, so they'd send you to one of the healing centers. Right around the corner, there's a healing tunnel. Put the patients in there, and a lot of times you would induce a dream sleep, sometimes with some medicines. Healing could actually come through your dreams from the gods. You would actually stay in there, and the priest could be up above, kind of through the skylights, shouting encouraging words down to you. Then on the other side, you had more of the complex. So you had a sacred spring over there, there's a theater.
So thinking about Christians in the first century, what would their struggle be? What would their trial be, having your hospital associated with pagan idols, but you're trying to be a follower of Jesus?
You need healing, but your doctor's sending you to a place where you're supposed to be looking to a man who had been deified basically over time. And that was definitely against what you were taught, because true healing comes from God.
Even what they would consider their hospitals, these places of healing, they were saturated with idolatry. I mean, if you want to get well, you would go to this idolatrous place to receive physical healings. Them simply going to the doctor was exposure to idolatry. Just driving home the point how much their culture was steeped in these pagan ideas. And how would you as a Christian navigate all of that? I think we're living in a culture and in a time where there's a lot of pressure to acknowledge or validate everybody. Everybody's equally valid. Everything is equally true. And that what Christians are going to have to wrestle with and prepare themselves for is God does not share his worship. We're only supposed to offer worship to God, and Christ is his son, and there's no ambiguity about that. And so if we're going to be faithful to God, if we're going to be faithful to Christ, then I can't compromise and acknowledge or water down my doctrine to accept these things that aren't real. And there's going to be some cultural pushback on that. There are going to be people that are offended by that. There are people that are going to be upset about that. And what they're upset about isn't the fact that I'm claiming that God is who God is, but the fact that I'm not validating their opinion or their idea or what they want to pursue. So I think there is a lot of application and relevance between Pergamum and what those Christians were going through and what our culture is going through.
I mean, it's a pretty amazing structure, isn't it, Jeremy?
It's fantastic.
Yeah, this is the largest Roman red brick building that we've got in Turkey today. They've done a bit of restoration to stabilize it, but in the Roman Forum, you have a lot of buildings like this. So it's a very typical construction material used, by the Romans in this period.
What would the roof have been like?
Many of these roofs would have been with a wooden frame covered with ceramic tile. You can see that there are different levels as well coming up here too. So it was multi-story.
Yeah. So what was in here?
This is actually the base for the cult statue that was in this temple. So we have Egyptian merchants, becoming very active in cities like Pergamum. And so they introduced their own gods from Egypt. And so this is the temple to the Egyptian gods. Most prominently were Isis and Serapis. The cult statue would have stood here, probably Serapis. And what's unique about it is we've got a grate over here. Let's climb up and look down in there. You got a hole and then a tunnel going down in.
Where does that connect?
Yeah, in days of old, you used to be able to crawl through that and come up in here. The phenomenon is illustrating something we see in Revelation 13, where the beast out of the earth is able to give life to the statue of the first beast. The priest would come up, literally move the arms, the smoke and sound and light show.
So a serious show.
Yeah, serious
right?
show. So all for the purpose of deception.
They knew what was going on.
Some did, some were probably gullible. And actually thought this was a statue coming to life.
All right, I'm gonna try to climb through the tunnel into the statue base where they made the idols speak. Let's see here. So I'm gonna go across. That's wild. So you've had the changing of the guard as far as the gods go, but then you get to about when, 2nd century?
Well, we've got the Christian community, but later on, of course, when this falls into disuse, this is transformed into a Christian church. Christians were quite pragmatic, it was like...
Make use of the space you have.
Yeah, exactly. So reconsecrated it, cast out the Egyptian gods, and this became a place of worship for Jesus Christ here.
We've talked about a lot of idol worship. We've talked about the Imperial cult. We've talked about the Greek gods. We've talked about Egyptian gods. Let's put it all back into our discussion about Revelation and the Christians here at Pergamum. I think you used the word syncretism.
Yeah, this whole phenomenon of the teaching of Balaam, the Nicolaitans, this seems to be their teaching, that you can have it both ways. You can partake of the spiritual smorgasbord, that was going on in the Greco-Roman world, but also Jesus Christ.
Loyalty to Jesus is exclusive.
Exclusive, yeah, absolutely.
What a fantastic building.